philosopher, Freemason, antiquarian, jurist, historian, Robert W.Sullivan IV, and we're gonna talk about some exciting subject matter. We talked with you, Robert, briefly on the announcement of the RFK Jr. Running for the presidency in 2024. And he made some waves again, repeating the claims about his uncle, John F. Kennedy, and the involvement of CIA in his assassination. And previously, he made another remarks, not only this year, but also 5 years ago, about the involvement of the CIA on the assassination of his own father in 1968. And I believe he knows some details which are not very well known to the general public. We know that the Palestinian refugee Sirhan is still in a custody since 1968. He's I believe again eligible for the parole. Previous attempts to get paroled were turned down, but he denied his involvement actually in assassination multiple times, claiming that he doesn't remember anything. He did this claim right away after his arrest, and he maintained his innocence right through the over 50 years of his imprisonment. So, do you have any new details concerning the assassination of the Kennedy brothers and some occult side of the story? Because obviously, the occult side of the story is present in both assassinations, especially in John F. K. JFK. It's 100% sure, because we know already many details involving some kind of synchronicities with usual 33, the involvement of a local, let's say, local crime bosses, mafia bosses, CIA, and even possible involvement of Bush Sr. in the assassination. And the setting of the assassination of JFK in Dallas resembles very much on some occult symbology, and we touch this in the future, I hope. But what do you know about the brain removal of JFK in Parkland?
Right. Well, thank you, Dean, for having me back on your show. I was on another podcast about 4 or 5 months ago, and I was just on usual, talking my usual stuff, Freemasonry, movie symbolism, and somehow or another the Kennedy assassination got brought up. I made the comment. I said, "Well, I know where Kennedy's brain is," and it was quite. It was relayed to me in a story from a Kennedy insider. So it's important for you to know, and for the listeners to know, I have no firsthand knowledge of this. This was told to me by somebody, but the person who told me the story, I had no reason to disbelieve. And it wasn't any great big secret or anything. This person just casually told me, he said, I know where the brain is. He told the story to me. I'm going to tell it to you. Again, I have no firsthand knowledge of this, but it makes sense. I've always believed the story. And the story is this, that when Kennedy was shot in 1963 in Dallas, when the body was returned, there was no federal law at the time that made the assassination of a president a federal crime. It was a state crime. It would have been tried in Dallas, Texas by the Dallas DA, the Dallas District Attorney. So as such, the autopsy of the president should have been done at Parkland Hospital. Of course, we know it wasn't. It was flown, some would say illegally, back to Maryland, back to Washington, D.C., and the autopsy was done at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And it's very sketchy, what happened. I mean, there's all sorts of strange stories about it, doctors burning autopsy notes, etc. You know the story. Well, anyway, this is where the brain was removed. And the story goes that the brain was removed and was basically, essentially, evidence that could possibly dissect the tract of the bullet to see if the bullet had come from behind, as was claimed in the Warren report, which most people think, myself included, is BS, or that it came from the front, which is likely. And of course, if it comes from the front, there's more than one shooter. At any rate, the brain was my understanding of it was put into a jar, formaldehyde, stored, and it was kept in the National Archives as evidence. And if you ever seen the movie, the JFK, the Oliver Stone movie, there's a bit in there where they say, we subpoenaed the National Archives to get the president's brain, and it wasn't there. It's vanished. And this is where the story that it was told to me as to what happened to the brain. And it's not really scandalous or anything, and it's not really even conspiratorial, but I will tell you the story that was told to me. And again, I have no reason to disbelieve this story, but again, I have no firsthand knowledge of it. So, keep that in mind. The story that was told to me was that in 1967, John F. Kennedy, the president, his body was moved in Arlington to where it is now. It was originally in a different location. It wasn't too far away, but it was moved to where it is now, with the, torch on top of it. Everybody's seen the pictures of it all over the place. You can Google it if you don't know. When the body was removed in 67, the story that was told to me was Robert F. Kennedy Sr., the former Attorney General, got access surreptitiously to the National Archives and removed the brain in 1967 and placed the brain in Kennedy's casket, his brother's casket, and the brain is actually buried with John F. Kennedy in Arlington National Cemetery. His motivation for this is what was told to me, was that Robert Kennedy Sr., RFK Jr.'s father, was terrified of the brain falling into the hands of a private collector or someone who's going to put it on display and charge him, like in a carnival or something like that. This kept him awake at night, and he was deathly afraid that his brother's brain was going to be exhibited somewhere as kind of like a carnival sideshow. So Robert F. Kennedy got into the National Archives, took the brain out, and this would have been in 1967, and placed the brain in his brother's coffin when it was being removed in Arlington, and that the brain is in fact buried at Arlington National Cemetery in his brother's coffin. I was on a radio show about 3 or 4 months ago, and a caller called in, and they kind of confirmed this. One of the things that someone said to me was, if RFK wanted to prove a conspiracy, he would have kept the brain because of the tract of the bullet. And someone else called in who seemed to know more about autopsies and things like that. And this person had said, who had some experience with this, said after about 4 years, even kept in formaldehyde, that the brain at that point in time would have been probably in a liquefied state, and no examination of it could have been made anyway. So take the story for whatever you will. But I believe it. Unfortunately, for various reasons, I cannot identify the person who told me this story, other than to say that the person who did say this to me is no longer alive. So say that they are deceased, but I'm not going to give up this person's identity for various reasons. But anyway, I will say that this person was a Kennedy insider. He was very well connected. I have no reason to disbelieve him. And that was the story as to where John F. Kennedy's brain is located.
This is a really interesting story, because I paid attention to the brain story since, I believe, 20 years ago, since I saw for the first time the picture president lying down on the autopsy table. And I believe this part of the brain from these shattered backside of the skull look very, very suspicious. So some experts in photography said that the picture was actually doctored, and that yes, there's no way the actual wound could have been of such shape. And since I started following the story, I paid attention that one of the, I believe, a chief naval doctor from the Bethesda, he is the guy who probably within 2 years went out of the window, if I'm not mistaken, right? He was a colonel, I think, of the medical services in who was involved in this autopsy of his brain, and his death and death of the other, I think, over 70 people. Yes. Since the assassination of the JFK, since 1963, died under very suspicious circumstances. So, in any case, we may never know who actually and for what purposes were involved in the assassination. But definitely CIA and the other governmental organizations were busy with the heavy cover-up of the consequences and the investigation of the assassination. So that's certain, because all these people, including all this one prostitute which actually went by car with the police officers, and she was talking about that someone gonna kill the president. And indeed, within 3 days, the assassination happened, and nobody found this lady ever again. She was found dead, I believe, after weeks. And there's the famous journalist Mary Kilgallen, and the others who were involved in the interview, and Jack Ruby. So the list of the people who were involved and firsthand into the investigation of the assassination and the witnesses were dead under very, very suspicious circumstances. But what actually calls the most attention of mine, at least, and I think it's might be the subject of your research, in case if you don't know. When President Kennedy got elected, he sent out 77 invitation cards to the White House inauguration party. I saw these cards online, posted by the collector, and the last invitation card was under the number 77. And if you read the gematria, so numerology of the name Kennedy, last name Kennedy, it sums up to 77. So someone, maybe he personally, JFK personally, or someone who was actually running his day-to-day affairs, was actually privy to this kind of coincidence. So they send out namely 77 cards, and many of the people who actually were involved in the either witnessing the assassination or investigation died while 77 years old, including his own brother, Ted Kennedy, if I'm not mistaken. He was not very healthy man. He had a brain tumor, but it calls my attention that a long row of the people involved in either witnessing or related directly to the president or to investigation died when they were 77, including the main witness.
Right.
So I think it's
what I was going to add was the one witness was Domingo Benavides. He was the guy who saw Tippit being shot, and he said Oswald didn't shoot Tippit. He identified someone else. They brought him in front of a lineup, and he didn't identify Oswald. He couldn't identify the shooter, but he said it wasn't Oswald. And then there was Lee Bowers, who was a railway worker, who saw men running around behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll, and he died. Domingo Benavides died like a karate chop. He was walking down the street, and he just kicked over dead, and they examined him. He got hit in the head, in the neck with a karate blow. No one knows how or what happened. And then Domingo Benavides was like run off the road. He died. And again, no one knows what happened. There were no witnesses or anything. It's fascinating that you bring up the number 77, because, as you know, that is a very interesting number within the world of the occult. If you are familiar with Aleister Crowley, that is the number of the goat of Mendez. You get into the Kennedy assassination at Dealey Plaza with the roads, the highway overpasses Route 77 that Kennedy was heading towards. Route 77 goes by Waco, Texas. Waco, Texas compound set on 77 acres. Of course, 77 is all over 9/11. So, yeah, I mean, whenever you're dealing with that number, you got to take pause, because that number is very ominous and always seems to turn up in some form or fashion when you're dealing with the government and the occult. And whether it's intentional or not, we could argue about, but it always seems to be there.
Let alone that the whole setup of the assassination on the Dealey Plaza, because Mr. Dealey, he was a publisher. He used to be, I believe, a 33rd degree Freemason, and very powerful figure in a Dallas and overall in a Texas history. triple underpass looked like, I believe, like a bell, and it looks like a bell, right? If you're looking from the top, so it's kind of looks like a Masonic symbol. But what actually attracted my attention as well. I don't know if you are familiar with the serial which is called Route 66.
I've heard about it, yes.
Which ran from 1961 to, I believe, 1964. I don't know if you're actually familiar, but there's an episode which is called "I'm Here to Kill the King," and the plot of the episode is when someone from the CIA or some kind of special services in U.S. conspires with the chief bodyguard or chief of the personal detachment of some Middle Eastern king to conspire to kill the king while visiting the U.S. And you know where this king goes? The king goes to the Dallas, and he's supposed to ride right under the triple underpass. And this episode of Route 66 was supposed to be shown, believe it or not, on 22nd of November 1963, on the day of the assassination. When you try now to access the information when it was supposed to be aired, it wasn't aired on 22nd because of obvious reason, right? So when you try to now access the information, they give you different dates are somewhere in December, somewhere in January 1964, but not 22nd of November. But many years ago, when I was sifting through the data which was still available online, it showed that actually, I don't remember, was it NBC or CBS? They were supposed to air exact on 22nd. But there's more to it. If you look at the episode itself, of course, the whole plot rigs the supposed future Kennedy assassination, because obviously they made the episode prior to the assassination, so right. it's obvious. First, they showing on the wall 9/11, so the hands of the clock on 9 and 11. It was shown clearly. Second of all, there are twins, let's say supposed twins. They're doppelgangers, actually. There's a CIA agent and his doppelganger, which is a simple guy, the simpleton, which was supposed to be used in the assassination. So it's kind of twins and 9/11. But there's more to it. Not in this episode, but in several previous episodes, there was the actress called Tuesday Weld, which was very well known, and sure. She comes from a very powerful family. You know that Mr. Weld, I suppose, he was just recently the governor of Virginia.
I think it was Massachusetts, I think, maybe.
Oh, Massachusetts. It's very powerful family. They have several governors. So one of them was very recently. This Tuesday Weld was a very well-known open Satanist. But most interesting that she comes from a family, believe it or not, she is a direct descendant of the assassin of the President Garfield. And she was actually in the Route 66 episodes, not in this particular one, but in the other ones.
That's crazy.
And if you look at the episode where she actually stars, the guy passes the traffic sign and it says on a traffic sign, Kilkenny, Dallas, and some other place. So Kilkenny. You get the smell of it, right? Right. And there is no Kilkenny. It's not Ireland, right? There's Kilkenny in Ireland, but there is no Kilkenny in Texas, and especially it wasn't there in 1963. So there's Dallas, Kilkenny, and some other town. I believe Waco. So Waco was there. So actually three places, out of which one was fictional, which was actually pointing onto assassination. Kill Kennedy, Kilkenny. So this is just absolutely crazy. And
is the episode online? Can the episode?
It is. If you don't find it, I'll get it to you. I copied it somewhere. It's just mind blowing.
I'd love to see this episode. Yeah.
Okay. So the episode was the Tuesday Welt. It's called "Love is a Skinny Kid," and the episode with the king assassination, it's called "I'm Here to Kill the King." So believe it or not, it's just blatantly open, and there are more references to, for example, Marilyn Monroe, because Tuesday Welt actually walks amongst the tombstones, and there's the grave of someone called, I believe, with double M. So very much similar to the Marilyn Monroe. And also, if you look into the filmography of Tuesday Welt and Marilyn Monroe, they both actually star in the movies. One stars in the TV movie, and another one stars in the actual big Hollywood movie, which is Marilyn Monroe. Right. So there's some kind of made interconnection as usual when one movie leads to another one, and they all interconnected by the same directors or either same actors or something like that. So it's a usual Hollywood trickery, which is there. You will pick it up immediately when you see the at least those two episodes. There are more episodes, but those two are just mind blowing.
I'm going to take a look at them. I'm going to take a look at those to see if I can't find them online, because I mean, if I got to see those for myself, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, they shown the conspirators, the one from the CIA and this, I believe the Middle Eastern chief of guard. They meeting under where, under the same place where Marilyn Monroe stands in Niagara. They meeting in the same spot, in a very same grotto.
Right, in the grotto. Yeah.
So they cross-referencing several movies, interconnecting Tuesday Welt, Marilyn Monroe, Kennedy's, and others.
Yeah,
yeah, it is. And so there's a huge occult undercurrent in the both assassinations, and as RFK Jr. actually claimed in 2017, he actually posted his in his account in Instagram the information about what he believed was the actual assassin of his father. This is the guy called Eugene Cesar Taine. I don't know actually what is his first name, what is the last name, because it follows like this: Taine, Eugene Cesar. So I don't know where's the first name, where's the last name. And he died on the Philippines on September the 11th.
Right.
And 2 hours later, RFK posts his claim that he knows that he was the actual assassin, and he was standing behind his father. And actually, Sirhan didn't shoot his father from a front. In turn, the fatal shot was fired by this Eugene Cesar Taine from behind. And you can see actually on some pictures which are available from the hotel where the assassination in 1968 took place, that his uniformed cappy is actually sticking out of the crowd because he is a big guy.
Right.
So this is insane. There's a lot of occult or media. I don't know what do you call it. Actually, there's many things which cannot be just a mere coincidence in this.
No, when you look at it, like in my opinion, it just seems to be like beyond the ability of like a human hand. I mean, it definitely seems to be some sort of occult, supernatural power at work here, especially when you get into the numbers. We talked about some of the stuff with 9/11. With the numbers with that. I mean, you have the one guy, George Bush, Bush 41, 11 years earlier to the day, giving the New World Order speech. I mean, to the day, 11, and then of course
September 11th, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's just the number 11 just turns up all over the place. And again, if you get into the Crowley numerology, gematria, Kabbalah, I mean, what these numbers mean and represent, I mean, it's just unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, the thing with RFK's assassination was, I think I mentioned this to you the last time, was, I mean, it was clear that Sirhan always said that he was a Manchurian candidate, and then of course you had the movie The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, and in there the trigger thing was the Queen of Diamonds playing card, and the Sirhan, and the thing was the woman in the polka dot dress was the thing that was the trigger thing that sent snapped him and put him in his trance and turned him into the assassin. And there was a woman. There's a mysterious woman photographed, the woman in the polka dot dress, who no one knows who it was and no one's identified, or at least adequately. So yeah, I mean, when you get into the occult, the numbers, the movies, I mean, one of the ones I found was really interesting. I was going back and I was watching all the old James Bond movies. I can't remember if I told you this the last time, but it was Thunderball. And I just thought this was really, really fascinating, was in Thunderball when Spectre is meeting with Blofeld. And of course, Blofeld is based upon Aleister Crowley, especially the Blofeld on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Blofeld's trying to fake his coat of arms. If you read about it, when Crowley was in Egypt, he was running around calling himself Lord Boleskine, pretending to be nobility, pretending to be royalty. Of course, it was all a hoax. And of course, Fleming took that and invested it into Blofeld, who was trying to pass himself off as French royalty on Her Majesty's Secret Service. But if you watch Thunderball, Blofeld is at the meeting with Spectre, and two of the agents he accuses of embezzling money from them. And the two agents are sitting next to each other, and the two agents are number 9 and number 11 of all things. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you just can't, I mean, number 9 and number 11, he winds up executing number 9. He electrocutes him in the chair, and he dies. And of course, the chair drops down into the ground. Then when you watch the next James Bond movie, which is You Only Live Twice, this is one in Japan, number 11 is still around. And of course, this is the movie where Blofeld kills number 11 by throwing into the tank with the piranhas. So Blofeld in those two movies kills both number 9 and number 11 of all things. I mean, of all the numbers to pick, I mean, it's just uncanny.
It runs right from the outset, because the first time that James Bond introduced to the general public in the movie, Casino Royale, which was the first part, 1960 or 1961, Sean Connery shows up in a doorway of the Casino Royale, and meanwhile he looks onto the French roulette, and you know where the ball falls? On 9 and 11. Right. So it's just, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence, because first Mr. Fleming was actually a devotee of Aleister Crowley and others. So there's no accidental connections to the occult, because he was into it from his early years. And also there's some allegations of people from the British special services that Fleming was actually doing some secret service and for His Majesty in his earlier years. For example, somebody ascribes him actually the kidnapping of Martin Bormann, because, official story runs like this: Bormann disappeared. Maybe he was dead somewhere by trying to escape Berlin, surrounded by Russians. Nobody found his body anyway. But there is the guy who published the book. He was the member of the British intelligence, and his father was a member of British intelligence, and he actually. He believes that Ian Fleming and his team were actually directly involved into the abduction of Martin Bormann for the purposes of interrogation and some kind of getting secret information out of him. So I believe in this information, although of course the British deny this, but it looked very much credible when I read this. I forgot the name of the author now, but because I read it about, I think, 15 years ago. But it's very interesting read, and the guy who actually who published the book, he was himself a member of the British intelligence, and his father was one of the British intelligence officer who directly knew the involvement of Ian Fleming into this secret operation. So these guys are no joke, and of course, not strangers to the occult. Same as Mr. Robert, not Robert, Parsons, Jack Parsons, right?
Oh,
the founder of Jet Propulsion Lab, who was actually the devotee of Crowley. Yeah. And he started his own church as well. So these guys are not strangers.
You had Parsons, who was a Crowley's really hardcore devotee in the United States, and he's basically the godfather of American rocketry. And he founded JLP on Halloween. I mean, of all dates to pick. And then, of course, like you said, you had Crowley was known to Fleming. Fleming was his handler during World War II. I mean, in that circle also was Dennis Wheatley, of course, who did The Devil Rides Out. And of course, Crowley's in that with Okada. And then the other guy who hung around with these guys was Roald Dahl, who did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He was another guy, and you'll find, the occult and these hermetic themes going on in his work. And I think Dahl actually did the script for You Only Live Twice. I think he was the guy who wrote the script for that. He was buddies with all those guys. So yeah, they're all interconnected. There's all, the occult's involved with all of them. And yeah, I mean, it's just, like you said, with those guys, with the British intelligence guys, it's really easy to pin down.
Yeah, especially that the later generation, the guys like Jimmy Page, who bought actually Beliskin House of Crowley, right? Which actually burned down several years ago completely.
It was set on fire.
So they say. I don't know if it's completely true. They say it was completely demolished, but I didn't see the pictures of it. So
the story the story I heard with that was, I have a friend when I was in England. I have a friend who still lives over there. I mean, he lives there. He's from England, and he travels all around. And he had told me about Beliskin House being burnt to the ground. The story that I had heard was that the person who it had just been sitting there for years. It was purchased, and they were planning on turning the house into like an Aleister Crowley museum or like recreation center, where literally people, Thelemites, people in the OTO could actually go and conduct rituals. There was going to be ritual rooms, meditation rooms, Aleister Crowley memorabilia on display. And the story that I was told was the villagers wanted no parts of it and set it on fire. So who knows?
Yeah. And the symbology and the portrait of Aleister Crowley is all over the Led Zeppelin covers for the past 50 years. But the most spicy detail, I think, is that you probably heard the rumor that it used to be rumored that actually the Barbara Bush is the daughter of Aleister Crowley. The rumor is not.
Heard that one.
Okay. So look into the pictures of Barbara Bush when she was young, and look at the pictures of Aleister Crowley in a similar age. So let's say when he was about 40, 45 years old, and look at the pictures of Barbara Bush. But the rumor is not completely unfounded. Actually, the Pauline Pierce, the mother of Barbara Bush, she went to Thelema, to the Sicily, where Aleister Crowley ran his abbey, so-called abbey, where he was conducting the sexual rites. And so basically every woman who went there, they slept with Aleister Crowley because he made the gangbangs during the entire year. So there are plenty of witnesses who actually stated this. So it was the a very, very well-known secret, so-called. Okay, so she came back to the U.S. and she was actually a married woman. She was married to the Mr. Pierce, and so they say she was pregnant, which is probably true. We don't know if the father is Aleister Crowley or not. But anyway, there's a resemblance between the Barbara Bush and Aleister Crowley. And I watched one of the press conferences of Bush Jr. when the Candy Crowley, the senior White House correspondent who worked those days for CNN, she raised a hand and she wanted to ask a question of George Bush Jr. And he called her a cousin. So how about that? So
Yeah.
Of course, she was born in 1948, and Crowley died in 1947, which eliminates probably, most likely, the fathership of Aleister Crowley to Candy Crowley. But if you look at the portrait of Candy Crowley, let's say 10, 15 years ago, and look at the Aleister Crowley, they're probably related. And moreover, Mr. Nathan Crowley is the grand niece of grand nephew of the Aleister Crowley, and he is in Hollywood the prop manager for a blockbuster such as The Dark Knight and dozen of others. And I read his interview about 15 years ago, and he said, "Yeah, Aleister Crowley is the actually father of my brother of my grandfather." So he
would have been his great uncle.
Yeah. So basically, the interconnection between these people in Hollywood and Aleister Crowley, and actually the existence of some props which are questionable, how they got on the set, for example. You remember in The Dark Knight they had the Sandy Hook.
Right.
This is also a very, very well-known fact. They made the maps for the promotion in 2012, and there's a clear shot of this map, and they actually were distributing this map as a merchandise. It says Sandy Hook, and those are strikes where the Dark Knight was supposed to be striking, the Bane, right?
Right.
So, and Mr. Nathan Crowley was a prop master for this blockbuster, and the guy who actually was directly involved in running and managing the props for the Dark Knight, he died. You know where? In Newtown. So he went on his truck and he was hit by someone else by the other truck. He went out of the truck. He was completely maybe just bruised, not even seriously injured. He was taken by the ambulance to the Newtown hospital, and he never went alive.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and his wife, you can maybe find it somewhere online. His wife was actually raising some kind of problems about the board of parents in the school board, and this is the same school, Sandy Hook, where you know what happened later.
Shooting. Right.
Yeah. So the husband dies in Sandy Hook, and Jake, what was the name of the other of the Hunger Games? She's also from Newtown. Just by sheer coincidence. So this kind of people were this kind of coincidence where all these people and all this occult families are somehow interconnected by either by same movie they actually participated in, or they just interrelated. So this is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it is when you start looking at it and you look at the stuff with like Sandy Hook, and then like you said, like, you know, with Kennedy and 9/11. I mean, it's just these same numbers and these same things just keep turning up all over again. It's like, you know, you start asking, you know, what the hell is going on here? I mean, how can this just be some sort of massive coincidence? And it can't be. I mean, it's just, you know, too strange. And like you said, you get something, you know, happening in real life, and then you go back and then there's something in a movie that seems to foretell it, or some actor or you know, who's related to this person. I mean, it's just like, you know, mind-boggling, you know, the amount of the occult, you know, with all this stuff.
I watched one show. You actually you were interviewed by one of the radio channels, and you mentioned that those movie studio bosses, they were all Freemasons. But I believe when they started the movie studios in the beginning of 1920s, I don't think they were Freemasons, because they were very poor, and then they were very, let's say, how should I put it correctly? Not the background which actually permits them to be a member of Freemasonry. So maybe they became somewhere along the way climbing the corporate ladder, But I don't believe they actually from the outset were Freemason, because they came penniless to Hollywood, and somehow they're having very sharp sense of what the people would like to watch. They made the money because they were selling the products which were well thought after by the people. But I don't think from the outset but somehow they chose this place, Hollywood, which is clearly states Hollywood is the magic wood of which the magic wands were made of by druids. So the location was chosen on purpose. It's clear to me. But why did they find this location? Why they chose this location while not being actually the members of any secret society, at least from the outset? Of course, with the years, Mr. Meyer and Goldwyn and all the others, big studio bosses, they became Freemasons. But how from the outset they were all involved into the occult, or did they get involved in the occult while doing the movies? This is, to me, a very fascinating question.
Yeah, the guys, all the founders of the major Hollywood studios were Masons by and large. Like the Warner Brothers, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. I give a list in one of the books where they were all Masons. I couldn't tell you when they became Masons, but they all became Masons eventually. A lot of the Golden Age actors were, Clark Gable. There's loads of them that were Freemasons. I think Douglas Fairbanks Sr. was another one. The only one who wasn't a Freemason is the one who everyone says that he was, but he wasn't, is Walt Disney. Walt Disney was
he was Demolay, but Demolay is affiliated with Freemasonry.
Sure,
but
he never went through the Blue Lodge, but he was Demolay, which is, like you said, the Masonic Boy Scouts. And he was also J. Edgar Hoover's spy in Hollywood. Hoover was a Freemason. Disney was his spy, trying to weed out left-wing causes. It was a different world back then. But it is odd to think that, I don't know if it was intentional, or it was like or a byproduct, but how all these movies, there are some movies that are obviously very outwardly occult, movies about witchcraft or, monsters, you get into the, early days of Hollywood, the Universal movies, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. These are all movies that have these kind of outwardly occult themes, magic, sorcery, the supernatural. But then you get into sort of the movies where it's just a story, but they seem to have these hidden meanings, and like, what we've been talking about, where you can kind of go back and look at them, where they seem to be predicting, whether it be 9/11 or the 3 Mile Island incident with the China syndrome, which came out like 2 weeks before 3 Mile Island. It's just really, uncanny. When you ask yourself, what's going on here? And like I said, it's one of the things that, I've written books about. But, it strikes me, in my opinion, just after looking at this stuff for as long as I have been, some of it, to me at least, seems to be beyond the realm of the human hand. It would just be so hard, I think, just for humans to coordinate this and to plot it out. And to me, it strikes me as more, this is emanating from the world of the supernatural. Whether it's positive or negative, I can't determine yet. But a lot of this stuff, in my opinion, is coming from some sort of supernatural realm. That's my take on it.
It can be actually both of it, because there might be the conspiracy or the long playing plans, but there's definitely some kind of a God hand at play. But actually, the first movie where I spotted 9/11, it stems from 1929, because it starts from the passage 9/11. I believe it's about Noah, so I think it's about the deluge. I forgot the title of the movie, but it's 1929, and it states verses 9 and 11.
Right.
It was the first one, and the next one is I believe it's only money or something like 1934, because they show in the Twin Towers on a very fuzzy picture on the wall, which looks like a Twin Tower, or which were, of course, weren't built yet. There's still 60, no, not 60, 30 something years to go to start the building in 1968. But there are different movies which are showing 9/11 or Twin Towers in the 30s and in the 40s. And there's one movie which shows actually, but very surreptitiously, it shows the Bush, but it's Mr. Busher or Jingle Busher. But it looks like when you read the inscription on the door, it looks like a Bush, like George Bush.
Right.
It's so it's a long running project. And by the way, very interesting fun fact. I believe it was John D. Rockefeller which tried to construct the famous architect of Spain, Mr. Gaudi, to build the tallest hotel, which was supposed to be called the Attraction, on the very spot where later the Port Authority built WTC, Twin Towers. And I believe the Gaudi asked too much money from the Rockefeller. The actual name of Rockefeller was never revealed. They said one of the wealthy individuals in New York, but I believe there could have been only one who actually could afford such a project. But even him couldn't pay the estimate which Gaudi asked, and the project was ditched and surfaced only in 1958 in one of the architectural magazines, and became public only in the 90s. But what is interesting, that Google Doodle showed the birthday of Antonio Gaudí, and it was 161st birthday, not 160s, not 150s, 161st. So because it's 9/11. If you just rearrange the numbers, and you know what the doodle actually ran, what they represented, it was one of his houses in Barcelona. It's a very famous house because I used to be a guide in Barcelona, so I guided the people to the various creations of Gaudí. So one of the very famous creations of Gaudí is a house which is called La Pedrera. So kind of stone house or something like this. So it looks with some kind of bizarre looking columns on top of the roof. Well, among of other things, because Gaudí used to make pretty bizarre looking buildings, and one of the pillars looked like on the Google Doodle looked like a portrait of who, Osama bin Laden.
Huh.
Yeah, and if you looked how Google arranged the picture, it looks like portrait of bin Laden, and then one of the pillars represents 9, and two other represent 11, and there's a plane flying over it. And 161st birthday of Antonio Gaudí. They never celebrated 150th. Okay, 150th was prior to the Google creation, but they never celebrated 160th or 155th birthday of Gaudí, and never celebrated any birthdays of Gaudí ever since. So they've chosen particular 161.
Yeah.
So
there was a couple things that reminded me of what the story you were telling me in I forget which one it is. I think it's the James Bond movie. It's the first one with Timothy Dalton, which I think it's not License to Kill.
The only License to Kill, I think it was the first, 1990.
No,
License to Kill.
Was it License to Kill? What? No, it was the one before that. It was the first Timothy Dalton where he's in the Middle East and he gets kidnapped by the Russians, and he gets sprung by the Mujahideen, and they make a big deal of it. So this is the Mujahideen coming to rescue James Bond, and the guy who rescues him in the jail cell looks just like Osama bin Laden, who's head of the Mujahideen. He looks just like him, and they escape on a plane, and it's again one of those things where, you just can't help but think of 9/11. And then I was reading the thing with the Twin Towers, how someone was saying, oh, well, the Twin Towers, you get into the Freemasonry. It's a duplication of Jachin and Boaz from Solomon's Temple. But of course, there's the other, the pillars of, of Hermes, Thoth, Enoch. And of course, the pillars of Hermes, which is what they were known to the Greek. Of course, Hermes is the god of trade and commerce. Hence, you have the World Trade Center. And then you had the building 7 of all things, which was right across the street. 47
Solomon
floors.
Brothers.
Right.
Solomon Brothers.
Solomon Brothers. It was 47 floors, 47 problem of Euclid, Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't make that stuff up. I mean, that's just too hard. And one of the things that was really interesting with it was someone was saying, oh, well, if this is all emblematic of Solomon's Temple and Freemasonry, well, why do you want to destroy it? And I was on a show and I said, well, this could have something to do with the age of Aquarius starting, the end of Pisces ending. And actually, if you go back and you read the works of Isaac Newton, of all people, Newton said in one of his books, he said he had synced the building of Solomon's Temple with the precession of the equinoxes. So the whole thing with the building of Solomon's Temple and its destruction was the herald and signal of these ages ending and starting. So, yeah, I mean, it's just too much.
Is this from a book of View on the Prophecy of Daniel? I believe it was called View on the Prophecy, because of one of his main alchemical books.
It's called, right here. I could go get it for you if you want me to get it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
The Isaac Newton book is Newton's Revised History of Ancient Kingdoms.
Okay, this one I don't know, because I read only the main one, the View on the Prophecy.
Yeah, he gets into some really occult themes in this thing, and he gets into how he gets into astrology with Solomon's Temple, the search for the Golden Fleece. But he was convinced somehow. I have to go back and look at it, that Solomon's Temple synced with the precession of the equinoxes. That the whole thing with Solomon's Temple was the building and its destruction was an allegory. And of course, this is what Masonry is all about, is the well, it starts with the building of Solomon's Temple. And then, of course, the high degrees revolve around the building of the second temple, the heart of Babylon, the temple of Zerubbabel. So, this again all ties into what Newton was saying. And Newton got into how this was all synced to the astrological, the Platonic year, this movement of the sun into this one, from house to house to house with the zodiac. Very fascinating.
Yeah, 1 degree each 72 years, I believe.
72 years, that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very interesting to read this book. Actually, in 2005, there's another book of Newton surface somewhere on the attic of one of the London's houses. Someone found it, and they say the book was encoded by Newton, and they believe it was about the alchemy, the pure alchemical book, and it was completely encoded by him. And ever since 2005, there's no news whether someone actually decoded the book, and they don't even say anything about the whereabouts. So it's very, very, very bizarre news was back then in 2005. Same as in 2003. Just prior to the intervention of the U.S. and allies into Iraq, the German archaeologist Mr. Schneider, I believe, no, Fassbender, Mr. Fassbender from the Munich University, they claimed they found the tomb of Gilgamesh in Uruk, and within several weeks, the invasion of U.S. and allies took place, and the Stars and Stripes magazine, not the magazine, the newspaper of the U.S. Army, actually reported that they settled the air base, the Allied air base, right next to this place where they supposed to be found the believed tomb of Gilgamesh. And ever since April of 2003, there were no reports of whatsoever what they've done with the tomb of Gilgamesh. I tried to contact Mr. Fassbender in Germany, and he refused to comment. And it was very strange. And then several years ago, when there was a leak of the WikiLeaks over the emails of Hillary, I went into the Freedom of Information section of the State Department, and there was a document actually stating that someone, when they made a FOIA request about the emails of Hillary Clinton, I found the email by Hillary Clinton, which was requesting information of the Gilgamesh tomb and Nephilim.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I found the exact location because it was very difficult to find on a FOIA page of State Department. They probably migrated the file several times, so this is how they hide the things. They don't actually remove it, but they hide it. They hide it. They change the pages, and I've heard it from this technique. I've heard it from the special prosecutor John Loftus. He said he had a higher clearance while he was investigating the high position Nazis which fled to the U.S. and they were taking different positions in the U.S. government. And he said that when he had access to the different Pentagon files and CIA files, when he went into archives, this is how they were hiding the papers. They were just misplacing, so-called, accidentally misplacing the files.
Right.
And they were all over in different places where they actually didn't belong. So now the State Department does the same thing. But I found the file. I actually made a video about this, so I know current location, but they might change the game. So Hillary Clinton was requesting in email one of her aides. I don't remember what the name of the aide. It was some kind of foreign name, maybe Hindu name or something like that. Please provide information pertaining the tomb of Gilgamesh and the Nephilim. And the email is from 2015. 2015, when she was still the State Secretary of State. So very interesting, because I never ever saw any information in the public space about what happened to such an enormous archaeological find, which actually proves the Epic of Gilgamesh and somehow indirectly proves the Deluge story in the Bible, because they are both very similar.
Right, of course, yeah. It's strange. It's strange how you can't find stuff after it happens online, and it seems to be removed. I remember, I think it was back in 2016 when Trump was running for president the first time. He was up on the stage at an airport. He had landed. He was still campaigning at the time, and some guy ran up on stage and tried to tackle him. The Secret Service got him and pinned him down, and the guy was taken away. And the story that came out immediately, and it disappeared. The story completely disappeared. You can't find it anywhere. I don't even think you can find the guy's name. I couldn't even find. I went searching for this a couple years ago. I couldn't even find any reference to this thing ever even happening. The guy ran up on stage. He was tackled by the Secret Service. He was arrested, and it leaked out that the guy. They didn't give any psychiatric information on the guy. The guy claimed to be a time traveler from the future who was sent back to kill Trump. And the story disappeared, and you can't find anything about it. If I went looking for it about 3 years ago, I could find nothing. I could find nothing about the incident. It was almost like a Mandela effect, like it never even happened.
This is exactly what I wanted to mention, because now they call it Mandela effect, but it's actually a clearing the past by digital means, because now they all basically all the libraries trying to push onto the students, for example, in the universities. Only digital access to the library. So they try to not facilitate the issuance of the paper books or paper documents. Instead of it, they selling or pushing the subscriptions only by digital means. So this way, it's very easy to remove any information. And within several years, we will have a situation like in George Orwell's 1984, where when the books from old times and the textbooks wouldn't be available, and they will be only available to special party members of INCSOC, like in the book.
Yeah, it's like the movie Logan's Run. Was it the guy living in the library outside the little co-op, and he had all the books? He had all. I think that's the movie I'm thinking of, and they didn't know what they even were. The people, it was a dystopia, and the people inside the little kingdom, once they got outside of it, they didn't even know what a book was. And it's like you said, this is how, no one even knows what this stuff is anymore. And especially if you digitize it. I mean, now, my God, I mean, I saw, they want to rewrite Ian Fleming. They want to rewrite this person. They want to remove. I mean, you can't do stuff like that. I mean, I'd freak out if someone was trying to re-edit my books other than myself.
Basically, in Israel, they're already selling the rewritten book of Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, where Little Prince is actually a little princess. Of course, they don't put exactly the name of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry on the title, but they say it's made by it produced and featured by, inspired by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, Little Prince. But I mean, the future generations won't know the difference anyway, somehow, somewhere down the line.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, but this thing, Mandela effects, I think it's actually many people were asking, what is your take on Mandela effect, apart of what we just talked about? Do you accept that it might be some kind of psychological phenomena, or is it just what we just talked about, the complete clear in the memory of the past actual occurrences and replacing them? For example, one stark example. Okay, we are almost same age. I'm 1 year older than you, right? So 1984, 1985, I believe, when Madonna was gaining popularity, everybody knew that the Madonna is the cynical pseudonym. So everybody knew a stage name, right? So now when you go to the Wikipedia, you see that her real name, Madonna Luisa Veronica Ciccone, or something like this. But when I grew up and when I was 14 or 13 years old, I've heard of multiple interviews. I've read it in the magazines that Madonna is a stage name, and actually her mother was called Madonna, but she was called something like Maria Luisa Veronica, or just Luisa Veronica Ciccone, but nothing like Madonna. Now it's everywhere. Everywhere it states that the Madonna is actually her name. So I don't know.
I remember it the way you do. I thought it was just a stage name. I didn't think it was her real name. The one that floored me, and I remember. I've talked to a couple people who have had similar things with this. I remember in 2011 or 2012, there was an actor by the name of Ronnie Cox, and he was the villain in Total Recall. And if you ever see the Beverly Hills Cop movies, he was Lieutenant Bogum.
Yeah.
And yeah. I remember in 2011, 2012, I remember seeing on Twitter, he died. I remember seeing tweets from Arnold Schwarzenegger sending condolences, tweets from Eddie Murphy sending condolences. I remember watching on TV, on Entertainment Tonight, them talking about, him dying, and, he was a big Hollywood star. They showed clips from Beverly Hills Cop, Total Recall. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was working on one of my books, and whenever I write about someone who's passed away, I usually put their birth and death dates in quotes right next to their name. So I hit something with Ronnie Cox. So I go online. I want to know what year he died. I'm thinking to myself, well, it was either 11, 12, maybe it was 13. And I go on, and sure enough, he's still alive. And I'm like, what? And I have specific recollections of this. Specific recollections of seeing all this. And apparently I never saw it. I was talking to someone who had a similar experience. There's a radio show host, and he said he had memories of around 2014 of the cartoonist, Stan Lee, the guy who invented
the Berenstain Bears. The Berenstain Bears,
no,
right?
No, it wasn't the Berenstain Bears. It was the guy who invented Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, you're right.
He said, I had a memory of around 2014 of Stan Lee dying. And he said, and I remember this so much, he said, I did a radio show on Stan Lee's death. He said, sure enough, it's like 2019, 2020, and I'm reading online, Stan Lee just died. And he's like, wait a minute. He's like, I remember this happened like 6, 7 years ago. This was like 2014, 2015 when Stan Lee died. He called his producer on the phone and said, didn't we do a show in like 2015 when Stan Lee died? And, and the producer was like, yeah, I remember. They said, pull the show. I want to go listen to that show. And it was blank. It was gone. It was just static. The show didn't exist anymore. So I don't know, what's going on. The thing with there's Berenstain Bears. Which one was it? Is it, what's the one? I can't remember what it is. It's
a spelling. It's spelling of the name. Spelling of the name.
Yeah, it's the spelling of the name. And there was the other one that was really freaky was, and I'd have to go look it up, but it was when Sally Field won the Oscar for Norma Ray. She got up on stage and said, "You like me, you really like me," and apparently she never said that. And if you go watch the movie The Mask with Jim Carrey, he impersonates that. And when you go watch it now, it's garbled. He says something that doesn't make any sense. And I remember him saying that when I saw the movie in the theater. But if you go watch all of it now, it's all altered and changed.
Yeah, I mean, the technical part of this story is clear. It can be done. For example, I think we brought up one of the previous conversations the story on the set of the Wizard of Oz when you actually were watching the original. From 1931, I believe, or 1932, right? Up to the mid of 80s on the VHS cassettes, you saw behind of the trio walking on the yellow brick road. You saw something big, like a long-legged bird, and the people are saying this was the dwarf who hanged himself. And actually, I pulled one of the obituaries in LA, and it coincides with the death of the guy who actually was playing the Munchkin. So maybe this is not far-fetched that the guy actually hung himself on the set of the movie. It was a long time, many years, right in the picture, and everybody watched the guy who hanged himself and never paid attention. Now they say it's not the corpus. It's a long-legged bird. But what bird you can see on the movie set? I mean, you can see flamingo bird there. So probably it was so. But now if you pull the copies or DVD or Blu-rays, you don't see anything. Right. I mean, they digitally remove it. So technical possibilities with the current engineering marvels are possible. So you can basically erase, but we are talking about the stuff which, I mean, goes beyond. I mean, your friend clearly it's not the guy obviously who wouldn't remember when Nelson Mandela died, because we all know he died back in 2011 or 2012. Not in 1991, as the guys who launched the term Mandela effect say. No, he clearly didn't die there, because I was 2010 in Johannesburg and he was speaking in front of a crowd and I was passing by. So I know he was alive. And but your friend was obviously knowledgeable in a good state of memory, and he remembered that he did a show. And of course, as a public personality, when you're trying to do the show, you of course verify whether or not the person in question alive or not, right? So this goes beyond for any possible explanation which we might bring up by just brushing off the supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, I can't account for it. I mean, I don't have a way to explain it. I mean, I specifically remember this. I mean, the only way it could be is I have a bad false memory of it. I mean, which of course is certainly possible. But I mean, I remember I wouldn't have, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't have gotten on my computer to try to look for when Ronnie Cox died, to find that out for my book. I mean, I thoroughly believed he died. I mean, I was, and when I saw he was still alive, I mean, I sat back in my chair and I said, wait a minute. I said, I'm like floored. I specifically remember seeing news reports on Twitter, this, that, and the other, that he had died. So apparently it never happened, but I have memories of it. So, is it some sort of like alternate reality bleeding through, some sort of quantum mechanics explanation? I mean, or is it just me having some sort of bad memory that I have? I don't know. I don't have, but I mean,
I don't think you have a bad memory, because you obviously have an excellent memory. So am I. It doesn't exclude the possibility that we might remember something wrongly, but those are public figures where actually I always verify information, because
that's what I am.
From day to day, I mean, you see some kind of obituaries popping up, but there's some kind of false announcement by the news organizations. Then they pull it back. I always keep track on this. So when somebody actually dies, or some kind of public personality, I always verify whether actually took place, or is it one of the hoaxes which actually going around? And of course, all these major news channels, they already have the obituaries of the people in the advanced age, because they want to be first going on air with with some kind of announcement. And of course, they have it. But I don't believe for a second that any channel wrongly, just by sheer coincidence, releases the obituary of the person which isn't dead. So that I find very very interesting. Whenever I see somebody's announced dead, and then within a couple of days or next day they deny this, couple of days later or a week later he actually dies. That I see a kind of sign of wrongdoing. That the person is actually scheduled to die.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. And like I said, I mean, I've experienced Mandela effect. So I mean, I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you what it is. But when it happens to you, it's definitely eye-opening. And especially when you have specific memories of something, you find out it was false. You know, it makes you sit up in your chair. At least it did for me. And like I said, the thing with Ronnie Cox, I mean, I specifically remember all this stuff, but it never happened. So I can't account for it. Who knows?
Since Robert, you mentioned Ronnie Cox, pay attention to Mr. Cox, the famous famous Scottish actor. What's his first name? Now somehow escapes me. Cox. Not David Cox. Jesus, I forgot his name. He was playing in Red 2 with Bruce Willis.
I'd have to go look it up.
I will just Cox, the Red. He used to play Goering in the
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox, exactly. Brian Cox. You know what? You know what means?
He played Herman Goering. He played Melvin Belli in Zodiac.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. You know what means Cox in Welsh?
What?
Red. So one of his first movies where he played just an episodic role was called Red Cops. The red cappies of the uniform of the British military police. So that was the first movie, right? Then his following movies were always involving whether he was clad in red, so his dress or uniform, or he played in the movies which were involving the people clad in red. For example, in King Lear, he was playing I believe the Duke of Burgundy, and Burgundy is a red. Of course, Burgundy, like a wine, is a red color.
Right.
And then he played in a series of movies which was just outright called Red. When his dog was killed, when the Red number 2, and so I believe there's three or four other movies. So the guy with a surname Red was typecasted in the movies involving red color.
That's
and
weird.
Then when you see his appearances for the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, the guy is probably 76 or 78 years old. He's now dressing up in red tight leggings. It's just bizarre. So he kind of comes up on the camera and says, "This is not what I'm typically wearing, but I got to try this. Why? I mean, you're not 20-year-old guy." So he wears red. He's either with a red jacket and red leggings, or very tight pants, which are not corresponding his weight and age. So the guy was typecasted to play in the movies involving red color. So, and his name is Red. So Koch in Welsh is red. So this is very, very peculiar, because this all different directors, even different countries, from UK to Hollywood, but they all knew about red. I mean, not everybody, even you don't know that red. The Koch means Koch. Cox, because it's double kind of spelling, that it means red. So how did they actually, and why railroad them to this kind of representation of red? this kind of bizarre to me, but it's clear his career, his movie career, successful movie career. He's a great actor. There's no saying about that. But why they picked up a young guy who played this episodic role in this military police movie about red caps? Why they typecasted him in signifying anything connected to red? This is to me a big and weird. Just look into it. Look at it in his filmography. So he's whether playing characters which wearing red, or like in King Lear, it's Duke of Burgundy, which is also red, or some kind of shade of red, or outright the red 2, red 1, red 3. So it's just weird, but it's something for you to look into. And of course, I would need your feedback after you watch the Route 66. And I think you should watch all of the episodes. But those two,
definitely watch the Kennedy one.
Love as a Skinny Kid was a Tuesday Weld, which is the direct descendant of the assassin of the President Garfield.
Garfield's assassin was Charles Guiteau.
Yeah, Charles Guiteau, exactly. So she is the granddaughter of Charles Guiteau. Typecasted in the sequel, where actually the president gets killed again. The king gets killed, not directly.
Do you know the name of the Tuesday Wild episode?
Yeah, Love is a Skinny Kid.
Laugh
is a Skinny Kid.
And what's the name of the Kennedy one? It was a Killer King.
I'm here to kill the king. And I believe it's still there because they didn't take it down because nobody knows about it. So when the people are actively clicking and watching the old episodes, they of course are always tightly watching if there's some kind of suspicious exuberant activity on the old videos. But this one doesn't attract too much attention, so it's supposed to be there. I just will type in here to kill the king.
Oh, I gotta watch those.
Yeah. In any case, you when you find it, you download it because it might not be there because I already made a couple of videos about this several years ago. It's still there.
Do you think someone's like it's nefarious? Someone's pulling it off. The people that someone doesn't want someone to see this.
I watched. I noticed the situation when I have a discussion forum which I run since 2013, and whenever I posted the links,
it's gone.
It's gone. When people are clicking the links, which were safely posted on YouTube or other websites for years. But when the people are actively clicking some old stuff, which probably calls attention and probably reeks of the conspiracy, it's gone within minutes.
Right.
So
I've noticed that too. I've found stuff that I've tried to go back and look for, and it's gone. And it's gone.
Yeah. Now I see, for example, the materials I used in my book, which I was writing in 2018, they were freely available. Lots of stuff on Trump, about his recent past. It was there, so I didn't even download because I thought it's going to be there forever. But now, when I was preparing my new book, it's all gone.
Yeah.
So I'm here to see the king, to kill the king. Route 66. I didn't find it now. Hold on a second. Yeah, it's still there.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5. Okay. There's one. Yeah, you in any case, before watching, you better download it and watch this one, and probably complete episode will. Complete list of episodes would be necessary to watch because they all kind of interconnected. It's not only one, let's say, umbrella sequel, Route 66, but they all somehow cross-referencing each other.
I'll take a look. I wrote it down. I'm old-fashioned here, so I'll definitely I'll definitely in the next couple of days. I definitely want to watch the one with.
I'm pretty much sure you find more than I did in those movies because you have a better trained eye on this.
I can't wait to watch it. I'll definitely check them out, and especially if the one with the Kennedy was supposed to air the day he was killed. That's uncanny. Yeah, I mean that's really
Kill Kenny. Kill Kenny is just mind blowing. Okay, great. So I think we should probably schedule soon some other conversation because you will definitely find something on those episodes.
Yeah. We've been going now for over an hour, so we'll call this one, and I'll talk to you. I'll send you another email like in a month or two. Let me watch some of this stuff, and we'll schedule something over the summer again. Okay,
great, Robert. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good day of watching all these episodes.
I will. Thank you, Dean, for having me on, and just shoot me the link when you put this up. I'll keep an eye out. Also, I keep an eye on your YouTube channel, so I'm sure I'll see it eventually.
Okay, you will.
Okay, thanks.
See you soon.
See you. We'll talk.
Okay. Cheers.